Hi guys, so today I'm here to film a book review over Stolen by Lucy Christopher. It has 304 pages. This story follows Gemma, who is at an airport with her parents one day, and she ends up getting in an argument with them, and she goes off to buy herself a coffee because that's what you do after you get all heated up. You need a coffee, and she ends up meeting a mysterious older stranger that buys her coffee for her, and he sits down and starts talking to her, and partway through the conversation Gemma starts to feel not like herself, and that is the start of Gemma being stolen through the airport away from her parents. The writing style for this book is really unique. It's told from first person perspective. I didn't realize until I was looking at another edition of the book that it now has as a subtitle "A Letter to My Captor," which I did not have on my edition at all, so I was viewing this more as a journal document rather than a letter, but it is a letter. So rather than the character writing she or her or myself, it is written as I, and I think that's very powerful in this story, in the writing, because it really makes you start to feel like Gemma, because it's portraying from first person, which is how we view ourselves. We have the two characters that this story is all about. There's Gemma, who is 16 years old, and we have Ty, who is 24. And this story begins in an airport, but it overall is taking place in Australia, in the outback, I do believe. It's taking place in a place where you really have no way of walking to find someone else. So the way I view it, it's like outback, or it's in a country area where your closest neighbor is like a million miles away from you. So kind of like the perfect setting for a horror story. I want to just state, overall, this book I had a lot of conflicted feelings about. When I first finished it, I really didn't like it. And while I was reading it, I was having a hard time falling into the story. Like, I wasn't fully immersed in it. It was probably closer to the end that I actually got drawn into the story, and I was really starting to feel a lot like Gemma. And I think that the author really portrayed well how Gemma's character and Ty's character started to progress. It took a very long time before you actually find out the male's name is Ty. You find out a lot of other information about him as well, which I think helps to make him a more rounded character, but it also helps you to feel more like Gemma. It makes this story more realistic. It makes it less of something that feels like fiction. It really does start to make you worry closer to the end because of how connected you are to Gemma and also what's going on in the surrounding story. Now, if you haven't read Stolen, I would probably state don't watch any further, because rather than calling this the spoiler section, I'm going to just call it the key moments section, and I'm going to discuss a few key moments from the book that really stuck with me after I finished reading it. Overall, I'd like to state, looking back now, I actually find that I enjoyed the book. I did like it. It's not one that I think I would read again. I think it's one I'd be interested to watch come to life on the big screen. I think it's one that I'd be interested to listen to as an audiobook, but I don't think it's one that I would necessarily read again, because I didn't feel that the writing for probably the first 2/3 of the book didn't fully grasp me. The first thing that I'd like to discuss would be the airport coffee scene, as I like to call it. When Ty buys the coffee for Gemma, he automatically knows what to put into her coffee, which put huge flags up for me. I knew that the book being called Stolen meant that this book was going to involve an abduction. So I was very much looking at like specific details of the story. So when he started putting in what she wanted in her coffee, and she even noted that he knew that she liked something and didn't like something else, I thought that that was really key, because that meant that he had to know her well enough to know that, because that's a detail that you don't necessarily notice with people, like, how do you take your coffee? Unless you hear it over and over and over and over again, and you're being observant, like I am when my mom gets her coffee, which is large double cream. Not milk, double cream. My mom's getting all excited. She's sitting over here while I film this. That was just one thing that kind of connected with me, where the first flag went off and Gemma didn't notice it. The actual realism of the next few hours of the book, where Gemma ends up being stolen through the airport. So not only has Ty drugged her, but he's planned this down to the precise moment. He has an extra change of clothes to put her in. He takes her through the airport. He gets her on the plane. He's driving through the Australian outback to this house. He's got it all down to the details, like a passport for her. Who has a passport ready for somebody? Unless you're like a secret agent. He had it so precisely planned that it was actually terrifying reading it for me, because you're watching these different people interacting in these little snippets of how Gemma is remembering it, or how it's occurring to Gemma at that precise moment. And these people aren't even aware that she's being kidnapped. And that's the really terrifying thing. Ty retelling his childhood to Gemma, which is not a very pleasant childhood, but it's something that connects you to Ty, and it's actually one of the turning points in the story. Gemma kind of stops looking at Ty as the abductor, as the bad guy, and she starts viewing him as this human. And that's the scary thing, because now we're starting on to Stockholm Syndrome, because she's now viewing her kidnapper as another person. He's not an abductor, he is a person now. And this is where the stage starts to get set for everything else to happen. It's really sad that Ty had this unfortunate childhood, but it's the fact that Gemma played such a key role in his childhood with what was going on. One scene that, again, it was terrifying, but it's also a scene where you see hopelessness, is when Ty actually allows Gemma to run away. And I say that he allows her because he does. You know from the start that he's actually allowed Gemma to do this, because he knows that she's not going to be able to get away from him. So when she's running and running and running and running, and she knows that she's not going to be able to get away, that point in time when she figures out that she's not going to be able to get away from him is the really hopeless state. She ends up knowing that there is no way to escape where she is, to escape him, to escape this situation. And you do. It comes across very well in the writing, especially with it being in first person, the hopelessness of the situation. The scene where Gemma decides to go to Ty and tell him that she thinks she's in love with him. First off, I want to state here and now, that scene was very predictable. I kind of was under the feeling that he was going to try to catch a snake and she was going to get bitten by the snake. I had a feeling that was going to happen because it was a short while before that he had explained about the snakes with the snake venom. And that's the one thing that you have to come to realize, is everything in a story kind of clicks together like a puzzle. And when he had been discussing that he would collect snakes to make his own antidote to their venom, you knew that something was going to be coming up with that. So when she goes to him, you kind of have the horror of being like, no, you're not in love with him. It's just the situation that's making this happen. And then she gets there, and you can tell with everything going on that that's what's going to happen. But again, it's one of those scenes where it was very well written. And the situation that Ty ends up being put in because of it, you do understand that he does care about her, just in a very unhealthy way, because he is having to contemplate, do I call for somebody to come and help her, and I know that this is done, we're done, I'm finished, or do I allow her to die? And you do understand he still has a sense of sanity to him, because he does call to have help come, and it's kind of how the floodgates are opened. The scene afterwards where Gemma tries to stick up for Ty, and she sticks up for Ty, and she sticks up for him, and the way that her parents are acting and the doctors are acting, you're kind of in the same situation where you're like, no, like, we need to stick up for this person because he needs help. Like, he didn't know what he was doing. It's fine. Like, I don't want him to get in trouble. Like, he's already had a horrible life. You understand that situation that she's in, and she's trying to make it better, but you also understand that she needs to stop. But you as a person reading this is kind of like, no, like, I'm on Gemma's side. And then she stops sticking up for him because she doesn't want those weird looks anymore, and she doesn't want people to think that she's weird or awkward or something like Stockholm syndrome. But you also understand that, like, you need to look at it rationally. So she stops sticking up for him and starts thinking more. And that was a very key moment in the book. Like, there's so many key moments. They're not spoilers. They're key moments in the book because with being written in first person, I think you can't say anything other than it being a key moment because you've connected with that scene. You've connected with the character. And I think that's why in this one, it kind of breaks your heart a bit when she stops sticking up for him because you as the reader aren't fully wanting to stop sticking up for Ty because of what's been going on. The final end of the book, when Gemma has to decide, is she actually going to do what she wants or is she going to do the other thing that her parents want? Is she going to go into court, sit down on the stand and state, Ty and I knew each other for a long time. We decided to run away together and help him to get off. Or is she going to say what her parents want her to say or what she knows she should say, which is, Ty kidnapped me. He needs help. I understand that he needs help, but he kidnapped me. And she's really in this situation as to which is the right choice to make. Because part of her still loves Ty, but she also knows in the other part of her that what she is feeling might actually be Stockholm Syndrome. And I think that's such a key moment at the end of the story when she comes to realize that she may actually have Stockholm Syndrome, because she comes to understand that what took place wasn't right. But she's also in this dilemma as to what is she going to choose. And I do believe, if I'm remembering correctly, she does finish the letter stating to him she is going to go up on the stand and tell them that he kidnapped her because he needs to get help for what is going on with him. And she can't provide that help. And life is not always easy, and it's not always what you want it to be, but it is life. And I think that was such an amazing way to end the story. The conflict is real, the conflict is there, and in everyday life, this is what happens. You don't necessarily make the choice that you want to sometimes. You have to make the right choice, what is the best choice for others involved as well. And I think that's what was really coming across in that story. So I'm going to read something to you. I got it off of Wikipedia. I know Wikipedia is like, it's not a cited at all. It's not something that if you were writing a paper you could use. But it gave me the basic definition for Stockholm Syndrome, and I thought that I would let you guys know what it says. Stockholm Syndrome, or capture bonding syndrome, is a psychological phenomenon in which hostages express empathy and sympathy and have positive feelings toward their captors, sometimes to the point of defending and identifying with the captors. This is dealt with and shown extremely well in the writing. You do feel the same way as Gemma. At the end of it, you're just as conflicted as she is. If I was in that situation, would I be able to stand on a stage if I am in the same situation she was in with Ty? You don't know what you would do in that situation. And that's why Gemma's conflict at the end, being unsure what she would decide to do, I felt the exact same helpless state. With being written in first person, you really connect well with the character, and you really connect well with what is going on in the story. So there's my review for Stolen. If you guys would like to share your comments down below, feel free to let me know what you thought of it, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!